Wouldn't it be great if we could turn down and filter out all that excess noise and information? Good evening, everyone. Welcome, friends, clients, guests, and for those of you who I have not yet met, my name is David Sung. I'm the president of Nicola Wealth, and thank you all for joining us this evening. Now, initially, we had newspapers. They brought us yesterday's news today. Then we had Cronkite and Mansbridge, and they brought us today's news tonight. But then we turned up the volume, and we were brought the most trusted name in news, Ted Turner's CNN, bringing to us not just one half-hour news slot in the evening, but 48 of these every single day. Now fast forward, and whether it is your tablets or your phones, I saw a good number of you wearing a certain watch here on your wrist tonight. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Google News, we have Apple News Plus buzzing us and pushing through to us news headlines every single minute of the day. And with all of this information competing for your attention, how does any of it get heard? Sensationalism, both sides of the spectrum. Sensational fear on one side and greed on the other. Let's start with fear. The palms of your hands are delivering to you horrible news. Ebola, SARS, COVID-19, terrorism, the politics of fear, climate change. I'm not dismissing any of these as real issues, but you're being told to be terrified of disasters lurking just around the corner. Let's look at the other side of the spectrum, greed. You are being preyed upon for your irrational fear of missing out, FOMO. Investor FOMO has been around for hundreds of years. I could calculate the motions of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of people. Some of you perhaps remember or recognize his photo. You may have even read the quote before. Sir Isaac Newton is considered to be one of the most influential scientists of all time. This was one smart man who 300 years ago formulated the laws of universal gravitation. Now, his quote, "I could calculate," is not with reference to his science, but with reference to something called the South Sea Bubble. You see, Newton was an investor, and 300 years ago, he owned shares in the South Sea Company, which was at the time the fastest growing stock in England. And as the stock started to rise, he did perhaps the right thing. He decided to sell his shares. And converted into today's dollars, he made a $1 million profit. But as public euphoria set in and greed kept going up, Newton had perhaps his own FOMO moment. And he decided to jump back in, this time investing even more money. And as the stock rose and the South Sea Company hit its apex and the bubble burst, Newton went from making $1 million to losing $3 million. Bubbles have existed for a long time. Here's some more recent examples. The Roaring Twenties bubble, the technology frenzy, the 2008 global housing bubble. And in each one of these bubbles, there are the individual company stories that end up becoming the poster child for the train wreck of lost pensions and retirement savings. So whether it is fear or greed, what is it that causes investors to have what sometimes is referred to as lizard brain? When we see big, bold headlines, an ancient structure in our brain fires up, the amygdala. That releases adrenaline, which can result in an increased heart rate, blood pressure, increased breathing. That triggers the emotional, financial fight or flight, the fear or greed mechanism in our brain, which can result in an unconscious emotional state shutting down your cortex, preventing you from thinking clearly. So with fear and greed and sensationalism, what's the key for turning down the noise so that you can tune out the madness of the mob? You need to have a plan. A financial plan that gets you from where you are, tells you clearly the steps you need to take to get you to where you're trying to go. As a wealth advisory firm, our role is to first plan for our clients and then invest appropriately. You see, getting a good outcome, getting great performance is not about picking the next hot stock. It's not about trying to time in advance the next coronavirus, the next 1,000-point drop in the Dow. It is about having a plan. And when you have a plan, our investment team can then strategically allocate your assets so that you can tune out the noise. Now, for over 20 years, we've used an all-weather portfolio approach. It's an approach that has seen us substantially reduce our clients' exposure to the volatile public markets and diversify into the ownership of private hard asset commercial-grade real estate, the ownership of profitable private businesses, private debt, commercial mortgages, infrastructure, and other private assets. And over these past 20 years, through a tech bubble, 9/11, an Iraq invasion, mad cow, SARS, the 2008 credit bubble, an Ebola outbreak, a Brexit vote, and too many other world events to list here, our clients have experienced a 20-year compounded annual return result in excess of North American and global markets. It is a result that is almost 3% per year compounded more than a traditional 60-40 balanced portfolio, which unfortunately is how most investors have their capital allocated. Now, while we are not focused at all on the short term, our all-weather portfolio approach is the exact type of portfolio vaccine that investors needed last week in these very volatile markets. Let's look at the Dow Jones last week, which is a proxy for the performance of the US stock market. Notwithstanding today's little bounce back, last week the markets dropped 1,900, 1,200 for a total of little over a 3,500 point drop last week. Now, convert that into a percentage drop, and last week investors in the US market lost minus 10.7%. The US market was up slightly year to date, but after last week, investors in the US market are down now minus 7.4%. Our all-weather core portfolio last week was down minus 2.8%, leaving our investors essentially flat for the year. Protecting our clients' capital is paramount. Fear and greed, issues and opportunities. We are not ignoring them in any way whatsoever. To the contrary, tonight's strategic outlook presentation will be a chance for us to take stock of where we are. John and Rob, they're going to roll up their sleeves, and they are going to, in a calm way, look at the issues and the opportunities. Now, we hope you find tonight's presentation interesting. We hope you find it informative. The presentation will absolutely be factual. One thing the presentation will not be: sensationalist. Please welcome to the stage our Chief Investment Officer, Rob Edel.